Popcorn Junkies.
Welcome to the Popcorn Junkies.
Here we are, cramming in some of our last films of 2022, really.
Exactly.
And I'm sort of wondering with each one that we cram in, are they going to make our top 10? Or are they going to be our sort
worst.
of disappointments of the year?
Exactly.
So we're doing Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery, directed by Rian Johnson. Who obviously did The Last Jedi and directed Knives Out. He also did that film. What was that film with Bruce Willis? Do you remember where he travelled back? Looper.
That's right. I like that film a lot.
I didn't mind it, but
a lot more than a lot of people.
I'm going to say something contentious. I don't even know if it is contentious. I just find he's clearly a good director and he's clearly a good writer.
Yeah.
But there's always just that vital killer aspect that's missing, I felt, from nearly all of his films. Well, those films I've seen. Okay, so this film stars obviously Daniel Craig as Detective Benoit Blanc. You've got Kate Hudson in there. You've got Ed Norton in there. You've got Kathryn Hahn, who's brilliant. She's she of WandaVision. Oh, obviously she's been in lots of other stuff, but she's very, very good.
I only know her from WandaVision. Though.
Right, yeah, no, she's a cracking actress. You've got obviously Dave Bautista in there, Madelyn Cline, Janelle Monáe, and lots of kind of cameos in a sense, lots of small parts.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Like Ethan Hawke sort of spraying people in the back of the mouth.
Yeah,
sorts them out for COVID. Of course, we mustn't forget there's Leslie Odom Jr. in there too. So this is a follow-up to Knives Out, and you can't do a review of this without commenting on Knives Out, which we were doing just before turning over. And then I said to Nanny Di, or my mother, I said, "Come on, we should talk about this." So what were your feelings about Knives Out, the first film?
Well, let me just say first of all, straight off the block, is I like murder mysteries. I like them from the originals, which were Agatha Christie's, let's face it, detective stuff, and what was his name? Hercule Poirot.
Oh, right, you like all that Death on the Nile stuff.
Yeah, who I have to say, I think Daniel Craig was channeling in this, was Hercule Poirot.
Absolutely.
Right down to his Belgianness.
Yeah, without a sort of moustache, but with a cravat.
His weirdness, his weird dressing, which I thought was wonderful. I went to see the original Knives Out, full of promise, because it was an even bigger, starrier cast in this one.
Well, Anna de Armas was in there, Chris Evans, who plays Captain America, was in there,
it was
Jamie Lee Curtis.
It was more in the tradition of murder mysteries, Agatha Christie,
Set in
it was a family. It was a family, and that's nearly always the case.
Like Cluedo.
Like Cluedo, exactly. I know a lot of people liked
Knives Out.
So I'm thinking Knives Out, first Knives Out, more than this one. But I went to see it thinking, well, I liked it, but it wasn't my favourite film or anything like that. It was just all right. It was sort of one of those films that I thoroughly enjoyed sitting in the cinema, but forgot about as soon as I came out.
Yeah, I mean, lots of people, when we did the review of Knives Out, were very, very vociferous, extremely outspoken about the fact that they thought whoever did the review, got it wrong. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was a huge disappointment.
I don't think you ultimately like murder mystery.
No, well, I think I've said it before. I mean, I can't stand the Hercule Poirot stuff, Agatha Christie stuff. I find them, and there was that See How They Run recently, wasn't there? I find them really high on structure, and I'm always expecting the structure of the murder mystery to be more ornate than it ever is. So I'm expecting it to be more complex, and we'll talk about that with this film. I found them a bit embarrassing, a bit conventional, and they don't lend themselves particularly well to interesting cinematic experimentation, though in a weird way they should, because they're nibbling at the edges of horror, aren't they? And so characterization always seems to be put on the back burner, and people become sort of siphons for a certain type. So you have the wealthy type, you have the sort of, slightly poorer type, you have the married couple, and so people become sort of archetypes, rather than sort of complex characters that are all kind of... So that's why, in a weird way, a really contemporary version of a murder mystery was Bodies, 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 which I thought was a really clever, twisted sort of, whodunit type thing. Yeah. So whodunit, I'm not a fan of whodunits. I really wasn't a fan of Knives Out, which made me very cautious about seeing this, and I delayed, didn't see it at the cinema, and we watched it on Netflix. Mm-hmm. But I was exceptionally surprised as this got going.
Yeah.
I thought the opening sequence with the box was brilliant.
Yeah.
Being delivered.
I agree. I thought the beginning sequence... What's it with my voice?
I don't know, your teeth are falling out.
I thought the beginning sequence was great, and what I liked about it was he introduced all the characters not in an usual way. It was a different way to
I agree.
The way most people do it. It was sort of analogous to what was going to happen later, because each person in the cast received a box that was weird and twisted, and they had to find
I want one of those boxes. They're fantastic boxes.
They were fantastic.
Puzzles to solve.
And in that respect, that's if I hadn't known Rian Johnson at all, from that first sequence, I'd have thought this is a really good director.
Well, I thought it was brilliant. He was, yeah. I mean, obviously, he's got to be good. He's very successful. But I mean, I thought he delivered really tight, really, clever. It was whip smart. The cross-cutting was really neat. You're right. It was a really different way of introducing a bunch of characters that were about to be thrust into a whodunit scenario.
Yeah. And then, sort of having done that, we sort of get to all the players being on an island.
Well, I thought before that you had them all being taken to a boat, and I said to you, isn't it funny how many films have come out this year about extremely wealthy people getting on boats and going to places where terrible things happen
and getting
to
their
them.
comeuppance. And in a way, this was exactly the same.
It's another one. White Lotus is another one. It's one I forgot when we were reviewing Triangle of Sadness. So it's a real theme this year. It is,
isn't it? Yes.
Well, okay, so they all get on the boat. They all head to the island. We meet Ed Norton for the first time. I had my struggle with Edward Norton, who I'm a big fan of.
I'm a huge fan.
Was that he was out Owen Wilson, and I couldn't. I was left thinking I'd quite liked Owen Wilson to play this, but the problem with Owen is he carries so much almost slapstick with him that he wouldn't have been able to carry it. And I liked Ed Norton. What did you think of him? As he plays this sort of almost pseudo Elon Musk type billionaire tech guru.
He's invented basically a way to change the planet.
Well, he's created a fuel that's so dangerous it's going to blow everyone up. Just that amount. So what did you think of him?
Well, I always like him. He's one of my favourite actors, but I have to say this. Very, very, very slightly cheesy in this. I think he does serious brilliant, but I'm not sure he does comedy quite.
I think you're right.
Well.
I think you're right.
And of course, he's the person that it all depends on. He's the person that's invited them all together.
And it's important to say that he's invited them. So it's quite a neat tool within a tool of a whodunit, that he's invited them for a murder mystery. So he's set up a murder mystery. And Benoit Blanc, played by Daniel Craig,
is the only one that hasn't been invited.
Which is the same theme as the menu. So he shouldn't be there, and he's got there because, well, we'll discover later in the film that he's been invited and allowed access there through one of the other characters. And this subplot is it's not subplot, it's a key plot. So, you've got Ed Norton, successful tech guru, invites all these people for an elaborate murder mystery game. And there's another woman who was his partner in a sense, you're right, in devising and coming up with the tech sort of, what does he call it, disruptors. They're all disruptors. The disruptive tech that he originated, or the ideas behind his empire, but they've fallen out with each other, and so there's conflict.
Big time. I mean, didn't she leave or threaten to take some of that?
Absolutely. So there's conflict set up between those two characters,
because they all meet on the quay and they all sort of like fall on each other's necks, except, and this is a nice touch, guys, is the and apparently he finished filming it or started filming it when the COVID thing was at its height. So they've all got masks, so they can't all kiss each other, and they all want to kiss each other. Kate Hudson, who's the diva, has got like a lace mask, which would do no good at all. Which I thought was a nice touch. Lots of nice little touches.
About wealth and all that sort of stuff. Andy is the name of the character that he's the woman who arrives.
Okay. And they're all. So I can't remember the way Ed Norton responds to her, but certainly all of those characters are sort of a bit shocked and oh my goodness, she's here, and oh my goodness, what's going to happen? So thereby establishing that there's a thing between them. Conflict.
What did you think of all the individual disruptors? You said before we watched it, well, maybe Dave Bautista will be able to deliver a line. I mean, obviously he plays Drax in Guardians of the Galaxy. I thought this was a great role for him. I thought he played it.
It was, and also very funny. He
plays a sort of social media influencer.
Yeah, but also
sort of toxic masculinity.
But what do you call it when it's women's?
Men's rights, which as soon as you say it or as soon as you realise it, no, it shouldn't be. I thought he was very comic. I mean, I thought they gave him the right amount. I thought he was very funny. I thought Kate Hudson, I'm a big fan of Kate Hudson actually. I thought she was great as the kind of ditzy blonde woman who's just makes mistakes and puts her foot in it all the time, and is on the verge of getting cancelled and has been cancelled due to sort of I
thought she did just enough.
No, I thought she was great. And then you had Kathryn Hahn, who was the sort of governess, or she had politician. She was good. I felt they could have given her a bit more comedy because she's a great comic actress. And then
she was worried all the way through it. Wasn't
she? And then you had the character of Leslie. I thought he was very good. I mean, I think some of the characters were. One of my issues with this film was I don't think it quite knew, and I think this is something that was a problem with Knives Out. It kind of didn't go as far as I felt it could have gone with the comedy. It kind of would start to go there. Like you had this sort of hippie guy kept wandering around in the back of shot.
Which was hysterical.
But
we never knew where he'd come from.
No.
We discovered that he's got his own room in this palatial thing at some point by accident. But he could be a famous pop star. He could be anybody. We're never told. And that sort of thing was drop dead funny.
But I think one of my problems with the entire concept, and I have to say, I'm going to say it now, I think this is head and shoulders above the first one. I know a lot of people don't. I thought this was a much more entertaining, stimulating murder mystery. I think it has problems at the end, which we'll discuss without giving it too much of a spoiler. But I take one of my problems with both these films and the franchise, because 2 more are being made. I think Netflix have paid $1 billion for the rights to all of them. I know we differ on this, actually. I really think that what the script and the films for these films assumes is that Daniel Craig's character is carrying a lot of the comedy.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's a natural fit for the comedy he's trying to deliver.
Oh, that's interesting.
His accent has come in for a lot of targeting online, and it's a Louisiana accent.
It's supposed to be ambiguous, that we don't know where he's from, and he doesn't know where he's from.
No, but I never think it's good when I'm watching an actor, however good, with an accent where most of the time I'm worried he's going to go off. And there was a couple of points where he did.
Oh, okay.
And for me, that really distracts. I mean, I don't know why they've made him... I mean, obviously it's a riff on Hercule Poirot. I think they should have just made him American or British or whatever. Just keep it close to what he is. Now, and I don't personally think that he is able to deliver the comedy.
No.
That I think they all think he is delivering. So I think what happens is they almost remove the comedy that was naturally happening with all the other characters, and they focused it more on him.
Maybe you're right, because there was something wrong with that. I agree with the fact that he was actually given the main comedic thing, wasn't he? He had an awful lot to say.
Yeah.
And although I was enjoying him playing him, and I was not only enjoying him playing this character, this balmy character who dresses in the most ridiculous way and sort of wanders around, but I was sort of enjoying it, because we all know he was James Bond.
I know what you mean. It's a nice antidote, but you sort of think, wow, I mean, this has got to be more than an elaborate indulgence of Daniel Craig being able to play someone else with a weird accent he can't quite pull off.
No,
it's a huge enterprise if it's just for that. And I think that, I don't think this film is that. I thought for the first hour and 15 minutes, this was really good.
I would say the same.
I thought it was tight. I thought it was funny. It had me thinking. I liked the way in which the murder mystery concept was neutered in a sort of very funny way. I thought that was Daniel Craig's strongest moment in a sense. And the important point here is all of the invitees or the guests, they're all beholden to Ed Norton in some way.
Or another.
He's got them by the short and curlies,
exactly.
And they're all having to deliver to him something, because otherwise he'll ruin their careers, ruin their profiles, their reputations, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So that's another nice touch as to how and why any number of these people would potentially want to kill him, in a sense. And then the other issue I had with this film, and I suppose what it was trying to do in the script and in the narrative, was to emulate this glass onion analogy or metaphor, which incidentally does come from the John Lennon song, where he wanted to create something that people were trying to understand. In fact, James Joyce did that with Ulysses. There's evidence of him saying, I want this to confuse academics for years to come. Yeah. And I think what this film was trying to go for was not that big whodunit reveal.
Yeah.
But for a slowly evolving sort of drip reveal of what had been happening.
Well, also, and I'm thinking very carefully now, not giving anything away, but what this film does, which is very risky, I think, in a murder mystery thing, it's got 2 climaxes. It's got halfway through it, and I think that is the point that you're saying. You sort of started to fall out of love with it after that, and I think you're right, because I think it was a piece, written as a piece up until that point. And then I'm not saying that the plot wasn't there that we get at the end. I mean, that's necessary for us all to go out of the cinema going, but it didn't sit very happy.
Well, it neutered, we watched it with Maddie's boyfriend Paddy, and like you said, it neutered that eureka moment.
Yeah.
And I think there's a danger that if you're going for this genre, you kind of need that eureka moment, even if there's a sort of slow evolution. So I think you're absolutely right. When we went to the subplot of the Andy character, who set up the tech company.
That's too long.
Well, no, but when we went to that, it literally sagged. Yeah. It is sort of all that tension and all of the neatly constructed complexity of getting them all there. And I was thinking, right, they're all jostling for potential kind of, and then suddenly it was neutered. And I thought, well, that was a shame. And I think in a weird way, this film fell foul of Rian Johnson in the writing, thinking, I've got to give something more than the classic whodunit development.
So we'll have that as one plot, and then we'll have this.
But what like a glass onion. But what he actually had was one of the best whodunits I've seen.
Yes,
that had me invested and engaged to that point. And then we went off to this kind of. It was just a really curious sort of last 45 minutes.
It was, and just to say this about something that happens without giving anything away, because it's not giving anything away with the plot, that there's a scene in the last 45 minutes. I didn't think this until afterwards, but at the time I was thinking, why am I feeling so bored at this point? Where everybody smashes all the glass sculptures, and that went on for ages, didn't you think?
Yeah, and I didn't believe it.
I didn't believe it. It went on for ages, and every time I thought, well, he's going to show us the last person because he's made his point. They went on to another one.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing about a whodunit is you're supposed to lay, you know, what do they call MacGuffins or McGiffin, whatever Hitchcock had, you know, red herrings and all that. MacGuffins, that's right. You're supposed to be fixating on that, but not. And you know, there was the clever thing about words that weren't proper words that Ed Norton used, and you were supposed to kind of be, you know, blind alleys and cul-de-sacs of thought and all that kind of stuff. And yet it didn't quite deliver that for me. For me, it just completely lost steam at the point that we went back in time. And yes, the device, without giving it away, the device means that we then see all of the action that's happened on the island from a different point of view. Literally. But that didn't add any jeopardy. I just felt, I know what's going to happen here.
But also, I wasn't quite sure. I mean, the first climax, which is what Mark's talking about, is the Daniel Craig character, the detective, solving the plot, basically. And it's a long speech, and it takes us through various things.
And he wins an iPad.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's a funny moment.
But I think somewhere along the line, the director sort of started. He gives him too much, with the assumption that we all find this.
But that's my point,
yes,
and I think in the shooting of it, it's almost one of those dangerous things where the size of Daniel Craig's star power.
Yeah.
You know, the director's become enamoured with him.
Dwarfed all the others.
Yeah,
yes,
and so he's enamoured with Daniel Craig, and I just think there's this assumption that he's delivering comedy in a way that he just isn't. I mean, in a sense, he's almost. You want him to almost go Inspector Clouseau. More like the Pink Panther, because if he was more ridiculous, you know, him wandering into the pool, which is in the trailer, in his striped sort of suit, kind of funny, but just in his lines just weren't funny
enough.
No, weren't funny enough, exactly. No. And I thought Kate Hudson was actually the funniest thing in it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I thought she delivered the best laughs. And Dave Bautista, I thought he was incredibly good. I thought he was brilliant. I mean, it's a twist on Drax because he plays a sort of vaguely incoherent hunk. Yeah. But I thought he played that well.
I mean, I admired Rian
Johnson.
Rian Johnson's idea of trying to take something that's so classic, with always the climax at the end, really. Putting it in the middle and then replaying it. I thought that was a bold move, and I thought in many ways it was sort of, if it hadn't quite been Daniel Craig doing it all, I think it might have been more successful.
And I think you're right.
There was that sequence, which then, in terms of, I think a few of us sitting around watching it, it started to fall a bit flat. And then the other thing that fell flat for me, and it takes up a huge amount of time, is the subplot of the fact that the woman who was his partner isn't who we think she is, and she develops a relationship with Daniel Craig, and they're both in it together.
I didn't think she was a particularly good actress either.
Well, I didn't think. I thought she was all right, given what she'd had to say.
I thought she was all right in the second incarnation. And the other thing I would just like to say, I think in a weird way, you know, I love the term disruptor. These are all influence. You know, these people. He describes his guests in a sense, his victims, his hostages, because he holds them all hostage, doesn't he? In a set, not literally.
Comes from when they were at university.
Yeah, the disruptors comes from, and they were all doing things in their fields that was attempting to disrupt their fields. But in a weird way, Rian Johnson has tried to be the disruptor of the whodunit, and in so doing that, has lost track of where he had, as I said before, he had the strongest setup. And I think he just he didn't blow it, but he just let it trickle away.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I mean, I've always had, although I started off this review by saying, and it's true, that I've always loved the murder mystery, and Agatha Christie is the doyenne of I honestly think it's a genre, and I've seen an awful lot of murder mysteries now from all sorts of various talented people. I think it's a genre in itself that does much better on the page than it does in film language,
and maybe much better on television. It's quite a televisual format for me. I mean, I remember.
Yeah, this might have worked better if they were episodes. And
a series on Netflix, perhaps.
Yeah, which I never think, because I always think, there's too many episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's sum up and score it. So for me, I would say that I much preferred it to the first film. I thought when this film was good, and it was good for the majority, it was excellent. I really liked it. I was made to rethink my prejudices about Rian Johnson. He can do it. I think he has like The Last Jedi. I think he struggles with the final act of his script. And they lose almost all that energy and invention that's gone before. I thought the supporting cast was the strongest element in this, the ensemble cast, which is often the case, isn't it, with a whodunit. Daniel Craig just doesn't do it for me, but he sufficiently was he held it sufficiently for me to be carried to that 2/3 of the way through. I thought the denouement and the sort of final drip sort of conclusion was a bit of a damp squib. It kind of it didn't surprise me, and I wasn't like, oh, there were literally, I mean, there was one moment, but that revolved around one of the other characters earlier, around Dave Bautista, and that was it really. But the rest of it I didn't find. I almost didn't find it glass oniony enough. I felt there could have been more layers, and I think he got trapped in this analogy of the layers and lost the point of an impactful ending. So I would give this, I'd give it 70 out of 100, because 2/3 of it I thought was good.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I like the look of it.
Yeah, it does look nice. It does look nice.
I think as a director, and I was on my own a bit with Looper all those years ago because
But Looper, I liked the first 2/3 of it.
Well, that's yeah, I know what you mean, but I think maybe his sort of forte is something stroke science fiction-y that he can get his teeth into and then.
Don't say that to Star Wars fans. They think he destroyed Star Wars.
Oh yeah. Oh, he did Star Wars.
He did Last Jedi. That's Star Wars.
Oh, of course.
For which there's a huge backlash.
Yeah. I just thought some of the writing wasn't up to it. I thought some of the subplots, mainly the main subplot, just lost me really. Yeah. It's a bold move in a murder mystery or in any type of mystery to take us back to before these people meet. I mean, what sort of Kenneth Branagh people do is they introduce it usually very, very small.
In bite-sized chunks.
It's almost like
a bit like they did badly in Bullet Train.
Yeah.
You'd go off on a sidebar for a brief moment.
And you can sort of understand why, because you try not to interrupt the train. But as Mark said, all the supporting cast were good, and it worked, their stories with that. It was just the main girl that I felt it was too much.
I agree.
So, having said all that, now the score is a bit difficult because considering it's this sort of
genre film,
I don't think I'd be that different to you, Mark, that much different. I'd probably give it 70. I was going to say 65, but why? I'd give it 70 as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And just one final shout out. I think it's incredibly clever of Rian Johnson to have the bell tolling every hour, and it's composed by Philip Glass, who obviously is the master of minimalism. And here you have Philip Glass distilled to even a more minimalist concept, which is one note. Yeah. I thought that was clever on many levels. I like that. And let's not forget the direct inference that Benoit Blanc is gay with Hugh Grant's cameo as his lover, his butler. I think his lover.
I mean, I mean, those of us that sort of were thinking gay in the 70s. But I thought by his time.
I like that. That's a nice detail. And of course, Angela Lansbury on one of the Zoom calls, which was a nice reference out to Agatha Christie and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
So there you go. I mean, I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised for the vast majority of this.
Yeah.
For more film and family fun, don't forget to click the subscribe button and make sure to click the bell to never miss an update.